All right, well, good morning, seventh graders. We are moving right along here in chapter 4 with lesson 4.6. And our focus here today, as you can see here, says solve the inequality, graph the solution. Solve the inequality, graph the solution. So as we talked about, we did this with addition and subtraction. Now our focus is into multiplication and division. So I'm not expecting much difficulty. But this is n divided by 3 is less than 1. So remember what we did. We first want to think of it as an equation. I don't really like that as a division sign, but that's what they're doing. N divided by 3 equals 1. So what I know that I have to multiply everything by 3 because this is a division and the variable comes first. So I'm going to multiply everything by 3. Over here, that leaves me with n. And 1 times 3 is 3. So it leaves me with this idea that n is less than 3. N is on the smaller side of the equation, which means it's going to go to the left because it's getting smaller. It's going to be unshaded because n is just less than 3, not greater than 3. And then I want to make sure I have my 5 numbers, and I'm going to go down since I'm going left. 0, -1. All right, let's look at another one. -3 is greater than 2/3 p. Well, I'm going to have to divide everything by 2/3 p. So we're going to have 3 equals 2/3 p. And I'm going to have to divide everything by 2/3 to isolate p. So I'm going to get p over here by itself by dividing everything by 2/3. So I'm going to come over here, and since it's 3 divided by 2/3, I'm going to come over here with 3 divided by 2/3 equals 4.5. Okay? So that's not bad at all. That equals 4.5. You might write that as 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1, 9/2. You might also write that as a decimal, 4.5. Either one of those would be acceptable. So now I know that that leaves me with 4.5 is greater than p. But don't be confused because p is on the right side of the equation, okay? P is on the right side of the equation. So it's on the smaller side of the equation, which means I'm going to be moving to the left. It's getting smaller. Even though it's pointing right, it doesn't matter. P is on the smaller side. So I'm going to make that 4.5, and then as we move left, that's going to be 3.5, 2.5, 1.5, and then just 1/2 to make sure I get my 5 numbers. And just make sure you make your graphs big enough and clean enough where they can be seen. All right, so here's one here. -0.5 is less than or equal to m/10. So I'm going to think of this as -0.5 is equal to m/10. When I go to solve this, I want to, of course, it's a division equation. The variable comes first, m divided by 10. So I'm going to do -0.5 times 10. I'm going to multiply both sides by 10 to isolate the m. So I'm going to come over here, and I'll go into my calculator, 0.5 negative, since it's a -0.5, times 10, that equals -5, as it should. So that tells me that m equals -5. But remember what I want to think of this as. I want to think of this as -5, and I'm going to replace this with the inequality sign, is less than or equal to m. Now, m is on the bigger side of the inequality now. Okay, even though we're saying less than, We want to see where m is, and m is on the bigger side, which means the number is going to get bigger. Now it's also can be equal to, so I'm going to make sure here that there's a shaded circle, all right? Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move it to the right. We're going to start at -5, then it's going to be -4, -3, -2, -1, all right? And that's what is going to be happening there. All right, so here we go. 4b is greater than or equal to 2. 4b is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, so we're going to set this up as 4b equals 2. I'm going to have to divide everything by 4. So that's going to isolate b. Now when I divide this by 4, it just becomes 2 over 4, 2 divided by 4. I simplify 2 over 4, it becomes 1/2. b equals 1/2. All right, so I know now I have b is greater than or equal to 1/2. All right, which means for my inequality, b is on the bigger side, so it's going to be moving right. It's going to be a shaded circle because b can equal 1/2. So I'm going to shade it. It's going to start at 1/2. I'm going to move it to the right, and it's going to be 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 to move that all the way to the right. Okay, now we start to look at things maybe somewhat differently. Because now for the first time, we have negative signs over here with the variable, okay? And so that involves having to actually switch the variable out, okay, when we have negative numbers with the variable. So when we look at that, all right, and let's talk about that. This is going to be 0.5 is equal to negative y over 2. That's what I'm going to say. All right. So I'm going to think of this as, well, okay. So 0.5, when it's negative y over 2, okay, what I'm going to do here in this situation, all right, is I'm going to say, okay, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and when I set this up, I'm going to think, okay, I want to solve for negative y. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to divide everything by 2. So it's going to give me 0.5 divided by 2. So let's plug that in. 0.5 divided by 2 is going to equal 0.25, okay? It's going to equal we're not dividing by 2, we're multiplying by 2. I'm sorry, this is a division equation. I knew something wasn't right there. So we're going to actually be multiplying by 2 because this is a division problem. So we're going to go 0.5 times 2, and that is going to equal 1. So we're going to have 1 here, okay? And then we're going to say, well, 1 equals negative y. Well, to make that work, I basically have to multiply everything by negative 1 to get the positive side. So when I multiply everything by negative 1, I actually end up with a negative 1 equals a positive y, because I got to get rid of the negative sign, so I multiply everything by negative 1. Now, here's the catch. When we have negative numbers with the variable, we have to switch the inequality signs, which means that I am not going to set this up as y is greater than. I'm going to have to set this up, flipping the inequality, as negative 1 is I'm going to flip it. Negative 1 is greater than or equal to y. Okay, that's what needs to happen there. I have to flip the inequality sign. Okay, so when I do that now, I'm going to say, okay, so I have y. Y is on the smaller side of the equation, and it can be equal to. So I'm going to have a shaded circle. It's going to be moving to the left because it's on the smaller side of the equation. It's going to start with negative 1, and it's going to be negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and so forth, but we want to have 5. Whenever you have in a multiplication or division equation a negative associated with the side where the variable is, you ultimately have to switch the inequality signs. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out some more. Let's go with this one. Negative 2/5 h is less than or equal to negative 8. So first of all, I'm going to go negative 2/5 h is equal to negative 8. Now, I'm going to have to divide everything by negative 2/5 to isolate h. So I'm going to come over here, and it's going to be negative 8 divided by negative 2/5. So I'm going to come over here. It's going to be 8 negative divided by 8 negative divided by negative 2/5. So it's going to be 8 negative divided by 2/5 negative equals negative 20. So h equals negative 20. But remember, whenever I have a negative number connected with the variable, I have to flip the inequality sign. So it's not going to be h is less than, it's going to be h is greater than or equal to, I must have entered something in the calculator wrong, because that's a negative 8 and a negative 2/5, which means that needs to be a positive 20. H is greater than or equal to 20, okay? Which means my inequality is going to move to the right because my variable is to the bigger side of the inequality. So I'm going to have a circle with a 20. It's going to be shaded because h can be greater, okay? It's going to move to the right, and that's going to be 21, 22, 23, 24, having at least 5 numbers. All right, just a few more as we are moving on here. Negative 12 is greater than or equal to 6/5m. Negative 12 is greater than 6/5m. Now, first of all, we're going to read this as negative 12 is equal to 6/5m. Now, this is a multiplication equation, so I'm going to divide both sides by 6/5. So in my calculator, it's going to be negative 12 divided by 6/5. So I'm going to clear this. We're going to have 12 negative divided by 6/5. That's going to equal negative 10. So that tells me that negative 10 equals m. Now, this does not need to be flipped. Now, you may say, well, there's a negative number there. No, the negative has to be over here with the variable. The negative has to be over here with the variable. So we're not going to flip it this time. It's going to be negative 10 is greater than or equal to m. M is on the smaller side of the equation. So my line is going to move left. It can equal negative 10. So we're going to shade the circle. We're going to move it to the left. It's going to start at negative 10. Then it's going to be negative 11, negative 12, negative 13, negative 14, and so forth. All right, just a few more. This is kind of a tricky concept, but you're smart people, so you can handle it. 12k is less than or equal to negative 24. 12k is less than or equal to negative 24. Well, it's going to be 12k is equal to negative 24, okay? And then I'm going to take everything and divide it by 12. Negative 24 divided by 12, that can be mental math. K equals negative 2. okay? Now, once again, I have a negative sign, but it is not with the variable, so I do not need to flip the inequality, which means that I end up with k is less than or equal to -2, which means once again, I'm going to have a shaded circle, and it's going to go to the left because k is on the smaller side of the inequality. It is closed in that direction. It has nothing to do with what way it points. It's going to start at -2, then it's going to go down, -3, -4, -5, -6, and so forth. All right? So, moving right along. -15 is less than 2.5x, but here, before I forget, it can be equal to -2, so I need to have a shaded circle. Two more. -15 is less than 2.5x, so we're going to make this an equation. -15 is equal to 2.5x. I need to divide everything by 2.5, so it's going to be -15 divided by 2.5. 15 negative divided by 2.5 equals -6. So we're going to end up here with -6 equals x. X equals -6. Now, which means we're going to have -6 is less than x. Once again, we have a negative sign, but it's not connected with the variable, so we don't need to switch the inequality. -6 is less than x. X is on the bigger side of the inequality, so it's going to go to the right. It has nothing to do with what way it's pointing. So it's going to start with -6. It's going to move to the right, which means it's going to be -5, -4, -3, -2. All right? Last one. X over -3 is greater than -4. X, so we're going to think of this as x over -3 is equal to -4. Okay? Which means I'm going to multiply everything by -3. -3 times -4 tells me that x equals a positive 12. Now, since there's a negative over here with the variable, I have to flip the inequality, which means this needs to read as x is less than. The negative is over here with the variable, so I have to flip the inequality. X is less than 12, which means that the x is on the smaller side of the inequality, which means my number line is moving to the left. It's going to start at 12. It cannot equal 12. That's why it's shaded. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. All right? We'll talk to you later, grade 7. Bye.